crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here to share some different ways of making galaxy backgrounds with distress oxide inks. There's plenty of tutorials out there for how to make galaxy backgrounds. I think I've shared in the past, and I use distress inks. This time I'm using distress oxide inks, but I just wanted to remind you of this technique because I think it's a really fun stress relieving one because there's no really right or wrong way to do it. It's really just about playing with ink and paper. So I thought that would be a fun thing to encourage you to do at this time. So I'm starting with picked raspberry, black soot, dusty Concord, and peacock feathers as my colors of distress ink, and I'm working on watercolor paper. I honestly don't know what kind of watercolor paper it is. It's a little bit thick, so it can, take some ink and that kind of thing, but it would work on cardstock. It will work on Bristol paper. It'll pretty much work on anything. That's what I mean. Like, it's a very casual sort of play thing. So I like to pick purple, blues, and pinks as my background and then add a lot of black on top. So like those colors sort of peek through, but you can choose whatever reads space to you. I've seen people use yellows, greens, really anything. And I just like to spread the color out in the background, and I like to cover the whole background with my three colorful colors and then add black, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I'm using picket fence makeup brushes, blending brushes, but you use whatever you have. I've used the simple distress ink tools, like the round blending tool or the square blending tool, rectangle, sorry. It all works. But I will say that the picket fence tools they provide a really sort of gentle layer of color and let you build things up. I like to add a generous amount of black, and I like to make a bunch at one time. So I'm making 3 different backgrounds with this one technique, and that's just because if I'm going to get all the supplies out and get messy and all that, I like to be able to have a bunch of cards at the end of it, rather than making a big old mess for one card. So I'm going to, once I finish blending those backgrounds, I am going to spritz it with just plain water, and the distress ink is going to react with that. I thought this was supposed to be fun because a lot of people have some sort of space or astronaut image, but if you don't, consider that you could do this same process with slightly different colors and make a really fun ocean background, or keep these colors and make a deep sea background because, eventually you run out of light in the ocean and it becomes pretty, dark and black down there. So it might be a fun way to retheme it if you don't have any space themed stamps. So when I was finished with spritzing it, I thought I added a little too much, so I put a bit more black in. I like them to be mostly black because it's space, but a little bit of color peeking through, add that to your personal comfort level. I am going to, besides spritzing it with water, I'm going to spritz it with Tattered Angel's Black Magic Shimmer Spray. So it's like a black and gold spray, but of course you spritz whatever you got. If you have just silver, that'll look great. I also added some Dylusions white spray to some of these. And if you don't have the white spray, some acrylic paint watered down will be perfect too. So I wanted to experiment with different ways to use distress oxide inks and create a space background, instead of just this traditional ink blending way, because like I said, part of this was just supposed to be the fun of exploring your inks and what you can do, and pick a technique that basically you can't mess up. So here what I'm doing is I have 3 pieces of watercolor paper. I'm smushing the ink pad, the distress oxide ink pad, directly onto my Ranger craft sheet, and then I'm spritzing it with water, and I'm just tapping my papers into it. It's the pink was my first color. Most of the paper's pink. That's fine because these colors are going to layer on top of each other. Distress oxides, because they have a little bit of pigment ink in them, they're opaque and they layer on top of each other more than blend sometimes, which, you can create beautiful blends on your background stuff. But if you're looking to have layers of color, it does react a little bit differently. So if you don't have as much success with this with distress inks, it could be because the pigment of the oxide makes it a little bit easier. So As I go, I want to have like less and less of each color. Like I covered the background like almost completely in pink, and then I just have a little bit of purple and an even smaller bit of blue. And I achieved that by spritzing less water because then I could kind of control where things were going a bit more. Finally, I come to my black soot. As with the first cards, I am going to concentrate the black around the edges, but I'm definitely want to get some in the middle too. Like I said, I do prefer my space backgrounds to have a lot of black and just the kind of colors peeking through. And as you can see, I'm literally just spritz, tap, like I'm like, oh, this one needs a little bit more. I put down a bit more ink, or, I touch that section of the watercolor paper to it. And it creates a different look for sure. Like they both read as space backgrounds, but if you think about what the first one looked like, and I'm going to get a blog post together where I share the still pictures a little better and, show you which one's which, but they're not crazy different. And also, you could leave it like that. I, again, like a little bit more black on my space themes, space backgrounds. So I'm going to go in with a brush and put a little bit more black on there. Definitely not necessary. And then I'm going to do the same thing to all I'm going to layer up on the backgrounds all the same way. I'm going to spritz with water, this is the white, Dylusions white. And here I'll tap it a little bit to create like bigger dots. And it's a little less opaque than paint. And I might actually have preferred paint, but I would have had to like go find my paint and water it down and etc. And my dilution spray was just sitting right there on my desk, so I used it. So you can see on the left is the blended background, on the right is the watercolor background. So if you want to go back and pause and see, but like I said, I'll try to put a blog post up with a bit more information. Now I want to try something else to mix it up. Like, if I'm still using Distress Oxide inks, how can I create a slightly different look? So I just take my Distress Oxide pads and I directly apply them to the paper. I just tapped it all over. All the different colors, create a nice base, spritzed it with water to let them sort of start bleeding into each other. This one, I was like, well, there's a lot of white space left. Do I like that? And so I decided to slowly spread the color around. Just a couple spritz. Just dry it, see if I liked how much this color had spread. Oh, I think I need a bit more. I recommend definitely going a little bit slower, because if you were to just like put a ton of water on there, it's all going to blend into like, a big mess of color. And then I did the same thing with the black. I just tapped it all along the edges because I want the black to mostly be at the edges. Spritzed it, not too much at first because I don't want to turn the whole thing black, and then start drying it. Here at the edge, it was like kind of resisting. And I thought, well, I do want to make sure there's color at the edge, but I also know I'm probably going to die cut these out. So if there's a little bit missing at the edge, it will probably be fine. But you can also go in there and kind of tap directly onto the paper again, and, keep working. But again, I'm going to keep saying this, I like the extra black. I'm going to blend a little extra black, but it's still going to look different. So you do you. I know I keep saying that too, but I'm just having a play and just encouraging you to have a play with what tools you have on hand. And when you are mixing like glimmer sprays and stuff, ready, like it all pools at the bottom. And many of you probably know this, but shaking it usually clogs the bottle. So instead of just shaking your bottle vigorously, I recommend rolling it between your hands, and that allows it to mix. It takes longer, but it allows it to mix without clogging the bottle as much. So give that a try if you'd had some trouble. Okay, let's finish up. I took all my space backgrounds that I created, and I cut them with the Distressed Edge Cat Scrappiness rectangles. I love those things. I use them all the time. It just creates something fun. And I'm going to use some Whimsy stamp label dies here. I die cut them out, and then I saved the piece that I die cut them from because I want to stamp them with my Misty so that they're straight and they look good, because I'm not a great stamper. And to do that, if I tried to put these like teeny tiny flags in the corner, it can be a little fiddly. by putting them back into the die cut hole, I'm able to control them a bit more. And I also get to stamp 2 at a time. And since I created a bunch of backgrounds, I'm going to create a bunch of cards. And so it saves me a little bit of time to stamp 2 at once. I picked 2 sentiments from the Avery Elle stamp set, and I'm going to take the same Peacock Feathers ink that I use in the background just to keep things like kind of matchy-matchy. I've lately been wanting more to not use black for my sentiments. I mean, I definitely still do, but just trying to mix it up, like do white heat embossing or colored stamping, just to pull in different colors and things like that. So I didn't really think ahead because I used all these like this, pink and purple, and then I had previously colored my images, and it worked for these large images that I colored. The stamp set that the sentiments are from is Avery Elle Astronauts. You can see the little astronauts off to the side there. But I also had these other little space guys colored, and they're actually digital stamps from Le Petite Market on Etsy, and I'll link to everything, but I'll link to that in case you prefer digital stamps, or, right now, when for some people money's a little bit tighter, you can get a lot more stamps in digital format for a lower price, and, there's different free resources out there, etc., but just, because I actually really like digital stamps, I color them a lot, I just don't always use them in videos. Anyway, after I figured out how I wanted to place things, I decided that if these astronauts, whether they be the animal astronauts or the human astronauts, were floating in space without a tether, they would get lost. So I thought it'd be fun to give them a little tether. Now, I am making their tethers kind of loopy, which might not be so good because we don't want any, kinks in the line. We want to be able to pull them in. But this is fun. This is not supposed to be super realistic, So there we go. I'm going to draw the little black lines so that they aren't going to be lost in space. And that's it for my cards today. I hope you liked this video. I hope it encouraged you to pull out some inks and just have a play at making a fun background. I will leave you links to the products that I use, but again, I think you really can find something in your stash that'll be great for this. And I will also leave you a link to the blog post so that you can check that out as well. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. And I hope everyone is safe and happy and healthy out there. Bye.